Hey guys, I want to welcome you to another episode of the Advisory Board podcast, where we bring in experts from the franchise community and business leaders to give you actionable, real life advice to help you build a strong, growing brand. And I've got a friend of mine with me, Monica, today, who I met at a Denver event. She was the keynote, and I got a chance to chat with her afterward. And I wanted to drag her into this podcast because she's got so many good insights, especially for all of you who've done anything in the restaurant space or trying to build a brand in the food service space. Like she's kind of the queen of like biz ops leadership. She's the author of Lessons from the Drive-Thru. If you're watching this, you'll see the poster behind her of the book that she wrote. It's a great book, but she dropped so many truth nuggets and truth bombs on us during her presentation. Like it was 25, 30 minutes. It wasn't like a
Yep.
long. I just thought I gotta get her on here and give her some airtime. So, Monica, two more notes I want to share about you. Then I want to pitch it over to you and let you just tell us a bit more about yourself. But
Cool.
the topic we're going to talk about today, guys, is how do you grow AUV? How do you grow same store sales through your frontline leadership? And the reason I want to share the topic early is because of the next couple of bullets. So you know, like why Monica's here talking about this. She was an operator, right, in Taco Bell, and 30 years later, she was on the C-suite of Yum Brands. She ended her career leading 4,000 stores at KFC. That had 400 different ownership groups, right? So she's used to working with anyone with 1 to 5 to 400 restaurants. So she really knows the space, but really gained a strong amount of experience, and she had a few aha moments early on. She'll get to talk about those of just, oh, the secret sauce is the people, right? It's the people. So anyway, and also one last note that's important too is she was the first member of the LGBTQ plus community that made it to the C-suite at a brand like Yum Brands. And that's an important note because for that community, it's important for those young folks that are in that members of that community that they can see there are people, there's a path, there's a place that you can continue to grow your career. So I appreciate you sharing that as well with us,
Oh,
Monica.
thanks, Dave.
Yeah, so
Appreciate
tell
it.
us more about you. Let the guests know who you are.
Yeah, so after I got out of the army, I pretty much figured I knew everything there was to know about leadership, because the army does a really good job growing and training young lieutenants.
Hmm.
I went to work for Taco Bell. I was a Taco Bell restaurant manager, and probably within the first several weeks, realized I didn't know anything about leadership. And team members at Taco Bell are not like soldiers. And I had to learn a lot of lessons the hard way, hence the name of the book, Lessons from the Drive-Thru, because it's all about my experiences in those 5 years when I was a restaurant manager at Taco Bell and how much I struggled because I just didn't understand what my role was, how to engage people, the importance of building capability, importance of owning my business. And so the purpose of the book and really my keynotes is to try and help frontline leaders and then the organizations that hire them to empower them, to leverage them, to make their jobs as meaningful as they possibly can be. Because I just believe fundamentally that they're the unlock, not just for our businesses, but even for like our communities.
Hmm. No, I love
So
that. I love that. And we're going to talk more about community, I know. So let's start. I mean, it's end of year budget season, right, Monica? So a lot of folks are trying to figure, okay, how much can we grow next year? Where's that growth going to come from? You
yeah.
shared a couple of interesting insights before we started recording. I thought we should start with that. Like, how should businesses be looking at their frontline staff, their frontline leaders as tools and resources and assets that can help to build the business and maybe contribute to growth in their planning for next year?
Yeah, I love this time of year because of that. It's like that clean slate. 2024 is pretty much in the books. What are we going to do in 2025 to grow the business? And my challenge to franchise organizations is what role can the frontline leader play in that growth? In my business at KFC, at Taco Bell, the difference between a good restaurant general manager who owned sales, who believed that that was their accountability, and one that didn't was 2 to 3%.
Mhm.
So imagine just having the right manager and doing the right things for that manager could get you 2 to 3%. That's aside from any marketing that the brand does or new product initiatives that the brand does. Imagine if all your managers were that empowered. And so I think the topic is perfect for right now, Dave, to talk about how do you leverage that manager to grow.
Wow. I mean, but and especially in a tight margin industry, a 2 to 3% bump means a lot,
A
right?
lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And without any incremental investment, you're already paying your managers. I was talking to who was I talking to? Oh, I was talking to a Taco Bell franchisee last week, and I was taking a guess at the starting pay, 55,000
Hmm.
for a restaurant manager. And so often those managers are running shifts. They're not running the business. They're working the line, they're taking care of customers, they're making food, they're giving breaks, they're sweeping the floor, but they're not growing your business. And so, how do you break out of that mindset and get them really thinking differently about their role?
Yeah, I love that. Well, I think we're going to dig into that pretty in depth today, which I'm
Yeah, let's do.
excited about. And one note too, a lot of the folks that are listening and aren't running restaurants, right? They're running other franchise type brands, home services, elderly care, pet care, B2B services, whatever the case may be. This we're going to talk a lot about Monica's experience in the food service and the restaurant space, but I just want to make sure you guys don't tune out because the exact same thing is true of running any type of a business. If you're a home service business, you got somebody who's like heading up, or we got an estimator. Maybe you start small, you've got just one estimator. That person has to, if you listen and apply the same principles to that person, they should be growing your business just like any frontline manager should in a quick serve restaurant. So anyway, I just don't want anyone tuning out because Monica's got a lot of timeless wisdom to share, and it's just in a different context. But hopefully that bridges the gap for you guys.
Right. I think if you have any multi-unit, the lessons are the same for sure.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. So Monica, let's talk about this first. Like the first thing that you mentioned is about developing capacity or capability, and I'd love to, like you've done this for years. What are some of the things that you've seen help to develop the capability of a frontline leader better than anything else?
Yeah, I was talking to a franchisor last week, and they were saying since COVID, they never broke back into that really developing their frontline leaders. They were so dialed in during the COVID pandemic of just getting the doors open, trying to serve customers and keep the business, alive, that they fell away from some of those old habits.
Yeah.
And so now we've got wage rates higher than ever. Like you said, margins are thin.
Mhm.
So how do you get your frontline leader to start to think and own sales? Well, the first step is, do we have to train them? And that Dave is could be just as simple as sitting down with them and looking at things like product mix or drink incidents and asking them how many drinks, how many more drinks a day could you sell? What if you added a dessert to every third customer so that they start thinking differently? What if you increased your speed at the drive-through 5 seconds so that you got more throughput, more flow through? What if you put together an accuracy program so that your digital sales, your delivery sales
Mhm.
were addressing the biggest pain point, which is accuracy? All of those kinds of things that maybe we know as bigger leaders, we need to teach our restaurant managers, starting with just looking at what's happening in their four walls. So yeah, I do believe the first thing is building their capability, building their understanding. Do you know that most business will say like, okay, your 2025 goals is, 5% same store sales growth. A lot of times managers don't know what that means.
Yeah, I'll bet. Not and again, not to demean anybody, right? That's not the
No,
point. But like just think about a lot of these folks, they came from, or they came out of military. They came out of they didn't get an MBA, and most of them
no, or
don't.
they were the shift manager last week.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so 5% of 1.4 million is what? Uh, uh, and then what does that mean today? So one of the things as far as building capability goes is break that down into something they can really understand. Every week you need to add 5 customers, 10 customers,
yes.
or
Mhm.
increase your ticket average by 70 cents, 50 cents. And so if you can make their goals bite size and understandable, then you create game. Then you create something fun that they're going after that they can track. Oh, if I have, 17 sides of sour cream per week, I can increase my sales 0.25%, 0.25. that's what I mean by building their capability, breaking it down so that it's very, very basic so that they can rally
Mm-hmm.
about around it and get excited.
Yeah. Well, then they can also measure it, right? Because
Yeah,
if you're on the line, it's really hard to say, ooh, we're at 0.22%, but I need to get to 0.25. Like they don't see that until they look at a P&L if they have that
that's right.
output. But if
And the
they're on
problem
the
with
line,
the P&L is it already happened. It's
yeah, exactly. It's
yeah,
retroactive. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree. But I love it. So, and that's true of anything. Like, okay, what can I do right now? I mean, I used to coach a lot of sports, and so like I used to be the weight room coach for our varsity baseball team. But you don't they're always looking at like the next goal. Like, okay, I want to put up this much weight for this particular lift. So they always had kind of that next level goal, and that motivated them,
yeah, it's
right?
measurable.
Yeah, because they could see
And
it.
then,
I was like, hey, I want you guys to get your BMI down to this percent. They'd be like,
huh?
that's not motivating because I don't know how to measure.
Such a great example.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if I'm gonna, but if I'm gonna break 200, on that press,
Hmm.
that's something I can get. And then what happens when they hit it is it's a celebration.
Hmm.
They get really excited, right?
Oh yeah, the whole weight room. The whole weight room. We had a couple of guys that
Right.
lifted like pulling up like 380 or something like
Oh my
that,
God.
and they got it and I mean these aren't even football players, right? These are baseball
It's a
players.
baseball player. Wow.
And
That's
the football coach was mad because we didn't have them play, but they're like their choice. We told them they could play. They probably should have some of them, but anyway, the whole weight room was watching and the whole weight room was cheering when they got it up. It's cool. So yeah, same thing can happen in a restaurant, right? Or
that's
in the
right.
home service business.
For sure. Because I mean, everybody wants to have fun at work.
Hmm.
And so how do you tie your business goals into the culture,
Yeah.
into making it like fun and game like? Well, you set achievable goals that everyone can, even the person working the drive-through or the front counter or making pizzas can understand those measurable goals that you can track on the bulletin board, and everyone can celebrate when we hit those. That's what I look at. And the second step is really around engaging your frontline leader, creating competitions. Quick story.
Please.
I asked 150 executives, franchisees, and people that work around the franchise organizations, what are your top ideas for engaging your frontline? What things work best? Have you seen work best? And I put all those together into a summary of the top 15. And I was a little bit surprised, but because the theme was, and it sounds really simple, but like creating incentives, contests, games, when you hit clubs. So, like one of my most successful franchisees, Stewart Restaurant Group, they have $1 million, $2 million, $3 million clubs. When you hit the $2 million club, your life changes.
Hmm.
First of all, you get a big, big check at a really cool event in Mexico at an all inclusive, or you get to go to Vegas for a really VIP experience with your significant other, your partner. So you get to wear a different hat in the restaurant. Your whole team gets a different colored shirt. So this whole idea of everybody's
Hmm.
moving towards that goal of getting to the next sales threshold. Those were the kinds of things that room told me about.
Yeah.
Games, incentives, contests to make it fun, but also grow the business.
No, I think it's smart. Well, visible. Like it's tangible and
Yeah,
visible, right?
yeah,
Even the rewards. So you get a plaque that sits, I got plaques on my desk from the franchise industry about our success. And guess who doesn't see those? My team. That all of that is a little pump me up when I look at out on my desk and I don't even look at them. So in fact, I had to go find them to make sure they're still there because I haven't looked at them for a long time, but they're not motivating. No,
not necessarily.
not
No,
necessarily.
no. You could have something in the store
Hmm.
or in your unit that the customers could see,
Yeah.
but simple, easy things is like do a press release um, announcing that this, McDonald's was the top McDonald's in your franchise, and have the local paper do an article about that. That builds pride. That builds community awareness. It helps team members see, like, yeah, we're number one, and the whole community knows it. It costs you nothing. Same
Hmm.
thing with leveraging social media. Put on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, who's your number one, where are your number one managers? Celebrate those accomplishments that can be visible both to team members, their families, frontline leaders, their families, and the customers and community.
Yeah, it's true.
Simple.
Yeah, big. I mean, we were talking about college football before, but how many people are flying, BYU flags this year that were a little ashamed to fly them the last couple of years, right? Like,
Eight,
seriously,
no.
Indiana, or like some of these other teams that just haven't been around for a while. Like, boom, here they are. Texas A&M coming back, right? Like, there are a lot more out of the closet A&M fans and BYU fans and Indiana fans than there ever used to be. But it's because they're proud of what's happening with their team.
Yeah.
Right?
People want to be a part of something that's winning. And also I do think, like we talked about this too, since we're going to go down the football, but I think the 12 team expansion has created so much excitement and energy in organizations that weren't necessarily engaged before.
Hmm.
It's not that different from your multi-unit restaurants or your units. Um, as you get people excited about being a part of something, being a champion, being a winner,
Yeah,
it builds momentum. It builds, and then that just drives the customer experience. It drives retention, which ultimately drives your top line.
yeah. And bottom line, right?
Hopefully, yeah,
Yeah.
better.
If they
Get
can
better.
just create more outputs with the same team, the same store, the same fixed expenses, that all
Right.
puts more juice out of the orange, right?
That's exactly right. You haven't heard me talk about buying additional equipment. You haven't heard me talk about investing additional marketing dollars.
Mm-mm.
All I'm talking about is a little bit of time, and that equates to some labor investments because you need to get those managers together and help them learn and understand and think about their role differently, and that involves some training, but
Yeah.
that's a one-time hit, and then the potential outcome could be year after year of incremental growth.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that because you're mentioning like the answer for this is we got to train them, we got to support them, we got to give them resources, tools, we got to upskill them. Well, how do you engage and empower these managers? Like what are you seeing works to help them develop more of a system of excellence when they're leading their frontline workers?
Can I tell you another story? So
Oh,
I'm
please.
friends with this guy. He runs a Slim Chicken, and his name is Casey. And I just checked in with him on LinkedIn over the weekend, and he's struggling. He's working 70-hour shifts, and because he lost three managers. They promoted one, and I don't know what happened to the other two. And so now he's in the weeds again. And so he's scrambling to try and develop some more managers so that he can go back to doing his role,
Mm-hmm.
which is running the business. Casey, he's a really good manager and he understands his role. The first thing you've got to do though is help every unit has self-sufficient management team, enough managers trained that can run that unit without the manager there, without the general manager there. Too many times we pay shift managers, assistant managers, but they're not really capable of running the unit when the manager's not there. And so then you have this, and that's a waste of labor dollars, number one. And number two, your restaurant manager or your frontline leader isn't running the business. They're just kind of going from lunch to dinner to late night and then do it all again the next day. So the first unlock is to make sure that your junior managers are capable of doing the job and that they do it, that they can be send your frontline leader, send your manager to a conference, send them on vacation for a week. That unit should continue to run at the same level. That's goal one.
Mm-hmm.
Goal two is then to pull your restaurant manager or your frontline leader out and build their capability around sales growth,
Hmm.
starting with the four walls, right? And then going out into the community, whether it's, working with the first responders or the high schools, just doing events, being visible so that you then become a place in the community. You become a pillar in, the chambers of commerces. This is old school stuff, but it
Mm-hmm.
still works in many, many, many communities.
Yeah.
So that's the second step, is building their capability. And then the third step is creating, a scorecard, an incentive program, these, contests and games that I was talking about that gets them excited about achieving these kinds of goals.
Yeah, and
That's it.
tangible, right? Tangible
Yeah.
things they can measure and see. Like, did we
Yeah.
get it? Yeah, we got 50 sides sold today over the lunch
Right.
period. Like that's celebration, right?
Yep.
How
Yeah.
how do you so incentivize? I anyway, in college I studied this a little bit, and then I've seen lots of different ways to do this in corporate America and white collar stuff. But how do you how do you do incentives? Is that a hey, shifts over, everybody gets blah 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 because we hit the goal, or like, how immediate do you make it, or do you? I mean, what works best?
It's a great question. And I think it's one that I could be arrogant and try and answer,
Hmm.
but I'm not going to. What I'm going to say is talk to your people,
Hmm. Hmm.
because what may be exciting and incentivizing today, 3 years ago, wasn't. It shifts.
Yeah.
What's popular, what gets them excited. Um, I remember at one point in my Yum career, we used to give out uh, stock options or rights to shares.
Wow.
And most of the managers had no idea what they were.
Yeah.
They didn't even know how to use them. They didn't know what what the potential was for them to grow over the years. Some managers, they even expired without them even knowing that they could have, had a ten or $15,000 gain after holding on to those for 10 years because they were too complicated of an incentive, right?
Hmm.
Cash is king. People like trips, and people like to be recognized in front of their peers. So some of the stuff I know works is different hats, different shirts. You go into the annual meeting where your frontline leaders are, and there's a VIP table for your top performers.
Hmm.
Those kinds of things matter. So there's a few expensive ideas, where you have to invest a little bit, and then there's a few ideas which really don't cost you anything.
It's funny. I mean, going back to sports, we had the last year I coached, we had a couple of really good just athletes on the team, and they crushed the baseball. And so, but somebody, I think it was the head coach, he had some cheesy plastic like WWF like wrestling belt that he'd spray painted gold on it, and it was made of plastic. But you would be shocked like how motivated these guys were. They were like so excited because they were I can't remember what we call it, like the heavy hitter. I think that's what we call the heavy hitter award and everyone's like, dude, who's the heavy hitter, coach? And then and these are 19, 18-year-old boys, and they were like, who gets to hold the plastic trophy today? Like you'd be surprised if you build culture and recognition you can make it kind of fun, but somebody gets to wear the all-star hat tomorrow
The,
because they crushed the number on the front register. Like that.
right. The turnover chain probably wasn't that,
Mm-mm.
valuable in terms of, a piece of jewelry.
Yeah.
But that turnover chain that spread across, what was it, Miami that started that? Um, the turnover chain, whoever, if you caused a turnover, recovered a fumble, you got that big chain, that big gold chain.
I forgot
That
about that.
and many teams started it. Why? Because it's a visible, and I'm sure it wasn't valuable, but it's just a visible way to recognize people among their peers. Simple, simple
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah, but then it gives you a daily reminder or even a shift reminder of, hey, who gets this tomorrow? Who gets this tomorrow? And yeah, I think until you get two of the same people that rotate onto the same shift, you have it. Now you got a problem, but
Yeah,
they
yeah.
can sort out those.
Another idea is um, to incentivize by offering things like, if you hit this sales threshold, we're going to get a piece of equipment that's going to make the job easier for your team members,
Oh,
like a power washer.
mm,
So you don't have to scrub the sidewalks. You can use a power washer. Things like that ultimately help your business, right? But you
mm,
might not want to invest in that in all your assets and all your units. So offer it as an incentive. I know one franchisee who bought this um, pretty expensive kind of dishwashing machine that
mm.
was awesome. I mean, it cleaned trays and stuff, amazing. And it was, it took a job that who wants to do the dishes, right? And made it automated and easier as a form of recognition for the whole team.
Wow, that's a great idea. I mean, it's a capital investment, so it's a good investment in the long run
Sure.
too. But now, I
Exactly.
mean, I have fewer people that are now struggling with the idea of going and scrubbing trays off. Like that's a really good
Yeah,
idea.
right.
Huh.
Yeah,
That's a great
exactly.
idea. So incentives, awesome. That makes a big difference. Any other thoughts on how do you engage and motivate a team? So clearly, you mentioned that you did that survey, and one of the top things was incentives. What were a few of the other nuggets you got as you were reviewing the leaders' feedback on what motivates their teams?
The incentives in games came up a lot. And the interesting thing about that is it was at all levels, like even at the team member level, right? If they could come to work and have fun, um, engage in some competition, it made the work more interesting.
Yeah.
I think what I talk to frontline leaders about in terms of engagement, though, is care. Uh, Today's team members want to know that they are cared for as individuals.
Hmm.
So before they're going to care about any games at work or any goals for for the store, they need to know that they're cared for as an individual. And so the frontline leader has to learn how to invest time and energy into knowing who that person is, who's their family, what's
Hmm.
important to them, why are they working, what's a bad day look like, what's a good day look like, how can I help you even outside of the confines of just the four walls of our workplace. And I talk about this in lessons from the drive-through. Once I started to invest in my team members as people,
Yeah.
they would walk through hot coals for me. They would do anything for me, not for the company, but for Monica.
Hmm.
And so when I talk to frontline leaders, that's what I challenge them with is how do you engage with your team as people
Yeah.
and really, really, truly care about them and their lives and their families, because that return on investment shows up when you need them the most. When somebody calls off and you call them and they come in for you.
Hmm. Yeah. And we wish, I mean, every corporation wishes that relationship was with the corporation. Like, oh, I'll do it for Wendy's or McDonald's or KFC or no, like
It's really
it's
not.
ever gonna really be that way. I mean, you can build loyalty over time, but that loyalty is like it's through the conduit of a great manager, right? That loyalty to the
Yes.
brand happens.
Yeah. My mentor and my friend Greg Creed, he was the CEO of Yum Brands. He would always say that the customer experience will never exceed the team member's experience.
That's where I heard that quote. I told somebody that the other day, and I was like, I don't remember
What
where
did
I
I
heard that. Yeah,
from
excellent.
me?
Yeah, say it again. I want everyone to.
The
I want
customer experience, your customer experience will never exceed the team member's experience.
hmm. Yeah.
Now, I've tagged on to that though. Who determines the team member's experience?
Yeah.
Not the brand, not the franchisee, their
Yeah.
manager.
Hmm.
Good manager who comes in, makes work fun, makes work interesting, develops and trains people. That's another thing. People want to know how to do their job and be set up for success. They don't want to fail all the time.
Yeah.
Uh, then the team's relaxed. You have a manager who's uptight, who's a yeller, who doesn't maintain the equipment, who doesn't, keep the restaurant clean. Nobody wants to work in a dirty store
No.
with broken equipment. Then you have high turnover. You have folks that don't want to be a part of it, right?
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. It's
So,
it all equates into a poor experience for the employee, right?
right. Yeah,
And good
exactly.
luck recruiting. And the bad thing is, especially in communities that aren't very big, word gets out really fast when you have like high schoolers that work at your business. I mean, my kids talk about it all the time. I've got four kids and they're 20 to twins that are 16, and our 16-year-olds are looking for jobs and like, oh, I wouldn't go to work there. I'm like, why? It's like, oh, because everyone says it sucks. I'm like, what do you mean everyone says it sucks? Like, oh, yeah, I know 4 or 5 people who've worked there and like it's terrible. I'd never work at X restaurant in town. I was like, oh, well, that's too bad.
I remember when I was a high school kid, the Dairy Queen manager was like a not guy you would want to work for,
Good
but
catch.
like
I saw it was coming out there. That's funny.
didn't. But like the Chuck E. Cheese team, they had a blast. So I wanted to work at Chuck E. Cheese, which is my first job.
And they also
But
had
yeah,
good
everybody
food.
knew.
Yeah.
The kids in the community know. They know, your hair salon, your um, restaurant. They know
Mhm.
whether it's a good place to work or not. And then you get the best kids, the best, folks coming to want to get to, you have more of a choice, right? If you've got more applicants coming in because it's a desirable place to work.
Yeah, yeah. I want to talk a little bit about building capability, but there's something about what we're talking about now that's really important, which is building a culture. And the culture is protected by two things in my mind. One is how like what is the manager doing to train and retain and support and like build what we've been talking about, get to know the people, invest in the humans and like and there's also hiring the right people. Like if you
Yes.
hire the wrong people, it doesn't matter how hard you try, like you're going to screw up your culture. Do you have any insights on that? I mean, you've seen that, I'm sure, hundreds and hundreds of times.
The biggest challenge I had in my last few years at KFC with the managers was changing their mindset around team members
Hmm.
because so many of them were using the old like, well, if they're not willing to work open to close 7 days a week, and if they don't come to 4 interviews on time, then they're not serious and I don't have time for them. And then they were complaining to me that they don't have any applicants. And I was trying to help them understand that that is not today's team member. Today's team member, even in our applicant, tracking systems and our employment branding, we say flexible hours, right? But then we only look at applications that can work open to close.
Yeah.
So accommodation, having understanding that, team members have families, they have kids, they have childcare needs, they're involved with athletics or things outside of school if they're kids. So having more flexibility and not being so rigid, why do you have to interview 4 times to have a job at at Burger King or Arby's or,
Mhm.
you don't. In fact, you probably don't even need to interview in person once. I challenge some managers like, how about you do the entire interview via text messaging?
Because
Because
that's
you
how
ask a
they're gonna
few really, right? You ask a
how they're
few
gonna
really
talk
good
to
questions
you. Yeah.
and you're going to learn a lot about that person. How responsive are they? How
Mhm.
well do they communicate? How well do they answer questions? How positive are they or negative are they?
Yeah.
And then invite them in to look around your place, have a meal, and then see if they're a fit. But you're right, because once you hire them, you're stuck with them. And so is your team. You hire a person who doesn't come on time, who doesn't care about standards, and they have to fit in with the rest of the team. They're either going to drag them down because they don't do their share,
Hmm.
or they have a negative effect on everybody else to lower the standards and slack off.
Yeah. I've only got one thing I'll caveat with what you shared about text interviews. Now, the young folks, I mean, I've got a bunch of teenagers. They're so used to AI. They're probably plugging your questions into AI bots and then spitting out answers and copying and pasting into the text. So there you probably do want to make sure you have at least
That's
one face
hilarious.
to face with people before. And otherwise, some knucklehead might show up who's just like, I can't even write a high school paper anymore because I use AI all the time. You want me to put an apron on? What's an apron? Like you never know, right? So
You don't.
oh
That's true.
man.
That's a good point.
But the medium, I love what you said about the medium because a lot of people be like, oh, I gotta sit down with them 3 times face to face. Well, if you're trying to interview a busy high school kid that could do some of your crappy shifts for you, but they can't meet with you during the day, like it's hard for them sometimes. It's
Yeah.
football season. I want a job so that I can start right after football season gets over. You're gonna have to give me some flex because I'm not
Yeah.
gonna leave the team to come work at McDonald's or wherever, right?
You have to invest in them
Hmm.
before they're going to invest in you.
Yeah.
And once you do invest in them, then you will get it back tenfold, I promise.
Hmm. Yeah, and I just to validate your point, my 20-year-old right now is working, doing some retail right now, a
Cool.
filler job, and he's had some challenges where like they promised, like he told them very clearly what he needed on shifts, and immediately they broke that promise. Like
Yeah.
the second week he was there, I was like, what do you got to work on, Saturday? We have a game on Saturday. He's like, I'm trying to get out of it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like that you were hired with the premise that they would be flexible around that particular window of time for the next 5 weeks. And,
Yeah.
and then it's a non-issue. And then he's like, I don't know what to do. So he had to skip some of his games because they wouldn't work with his schedule. I was like, well, good on you, but guess how productive and happy he was that day on that shift.
Exactly. And his experience is going to
Triple.
translate into a negative customer experience.
Yeah,
It's
possible. Yeah.
It's not rocket science. It really isn't. But it also involves, how that frontline leader is treated. Because
Hmm.
if you beat up your managers, if all they ever hear about is all the things they're doing wrong, all the targets they're missing, the mistakes, the customer complaints that they're getting, if all they hear about is that, they're not going to be able to, be cheerful and energized for their teams either.
Hmm.
So it does start at the franchisor level. It's like creating an environment where we support, we love on our teams, we cherish our frontline leaders because they have really hard jobs. They're the face of our businesses, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and I've got a question for you. So, and it's even a personal question sometimes. It's easy to spot. Like the way my brain works, I can spot an anomaly in a spreadsheet pretty fast, right? So
Yeah.
I zero in on the things that aren't right and I want to fix them. But sometimes I think that results in managers or even myself, you tend to talk about those things more than
Hmm.
everything else. And so it almost, but to the other person on the other end of the conversation, they're like, why are we only talking about like negative crap? So how do you coach your managers or people you've worked with so they can say, yes, yes, we need to sell more sour cream. Yes, yes, we need to upsell more drinks. Or yes, we need to improve productivity here or there. But like, how do you guide them to not make it feel like that's the only thing they're ever talking about?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Um, I prefer my, go to strategy is always asking questions, right? So
Hmm.
when I sit down and what do you want to celebrate? What great things happened last week? How's your shift manager progressing in their training, right? Let's celebrate the fact that, you had 5 less customer complaints last period,
Hmm.
right? There's always stuff to celebrate. And so I start by saying, what do you want to celebrate? And that gives them an opportunity, Dave, to tell you what you might not have seen
Yeah.
or what's on their mind. It gives you insight into where their focus is and what they're proud of.
Yeah.
And then from there, you're like, okay, cool, great. Where do you want to improve this period? Where do you think you should spend your energy and efforts and attention to take it to the next level? Who do you want to work on in development? Okay, this, shift manager learned how to run the shift. Okay, how about next period they learn how to close the unit?
Hmm.
Um, how are you doing on sales? What about your, food costs, cost of goods, cost of labor? And they can, through that method of asking them, you'll understand where their capability is, and then you can introduce new ideas or suggestions. What about this? What about that? And then I think the biggest thing is just leaving them with not a to-do list. I
Hmm.
see so many above store leaders go in and then they leave the manager with a list of 10 things to do. That's not empowering. It's not engaging. Give them 2 or 3 goals to reach in the next week, next period that they can measure, and then let them use their leadership and their team to go after those. But that's how I would do it. That's how I like to do it.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's a good one. It's sometimes it's so easy to find little issues and ticky-tack stuff and creating you stare down the other end of a ten item to-do list. I don't know of many things that are more demotivating than that because it's like, well, where do
Right.
I start? Like,
Yeah.
which one's more important? And I have 30 seconds right now to think about this and I take action. What do I do? Well, I
Yeah.
can't take action on 10 things. I
No.
can on two, maybe one. So I love what you're sharing is boil it down, like 80/20. Sure, you
Right.
can focus
Right.
in energy on those last 20%, but why not move the needle 80% with, one or two things?
And teach them how to think, right?
Hmm.
Us walking in and, just downloading what needs to happen does not build their capability. It does not make them better thinkers and leaders. It takes a little more time to go, all right, tell me what you see here. Look at this report. What do you notice?
Yeah.
Right. And
Mhm.
then what, oh, it looks like you have some shrinkage on this shift on this day of the week. Did you notice that? What do you think that's about? I mean, that takes more time versus just going in and saying, I think this shift manager might be stealing from you.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. That's
And but in the long run, the more capability you build in them, the more skills you build, then you won't be repeating that work. You'll be freed up to do different work because they'll be capable.
man. Yeah, you're ringing a bell right now that I totally agree with. I helped lead some youth initiatives here in the community, and we did a summer camp where it was entirely planned by a bunch of 16 to 18-year-old boys. We had
Oh,
100
wow.
kids up in the mountains rappelling, river rafting, like on boats on the lake. Like it was, or so we had paintball battles up in
Oh,
the trees.
fun.
It was a ball, and and we had like zero injuries really.
That's
Like
amazing.
the
I
whole
was just
thing.
thinking
Yeah,
about that.
I'm sure
I
the
was just
whole
thinking about
thing
risk.
was amazing. And when it was time for like group meetings and stuff like that, not a single adult stood up. Well, I mean, some of them were 18, but not any of the adult
Yeah,
leaders.
yeah,
We all sat back and they just did it all themselves. And it took so much more effort, so much, probably 5 times more effort than if
sure,
we would have just planned it ourselves, right? All the
sure.
adults who'd done this before. But the impact was probably 10x what it could have been if we would have planned it because they were leading it. It was authentic and core and they were motivated to do things. It was pretty impressive. But it took
It's a
more effort.
It's a really good point. I mean, if you think about like your most impactful leadership experience where you really grew as a leader, it wasn't sitting in a class being taught to, right? For me, like I can remember even in the military, war games, as a second lieutenant, where, there's the scenario you have to go here and set up an ambush or you have to set up a refuel point and do make sure everybody understands the mission. I mean, that's where you grow, where you have to put together a plan, execute the plan, and then do an after action review so that you understand where you were successful and where you could have done better. Those real time thinking
Yeah.
experiences, problem solving, is where I think you really foster leadership. Going all the way back to frontline leaders, these folks are ready for that. They're hungry for it. They want to do more. They don't just want to, go through the motions every day of getting the doors open, you know, getting ready to, serve customers, change of
Mhm.
shift, end of day. It's
Yeah.
boring,
Yeah.
right? But when we invest in them and build their capability, offer some incentives, challenge them to think, great things happen.
Yeah. What a good soundbite. I appreciate that. It's typical. I ask somebody for a summary statement. You just did it. I mean, that's really it
Cool.
in a nutshell. Monica, you rock. So let's say
Thanks,
somebody
man.
from this was inspired. They wanted to dig in. They want to get to know you or ask you to come keynote for them or whatever the case may be. What's the best way for folks to get in touch with you, Monica?
Yeah, my website, monicarothgery.com. There's a calendar link there. We can set up some time. Would love to talk to anybody. I love helping franchise organizations implement these kinds of ideas. Um, just super fun for me. The other thing I wanted to throw out was I forgot about this, but if you send me a text message 33777,
Hmm.
and in the text message, just write, let me see, what do you have to write? Happy Summit, 2 words, Happy Summit.
Hmm.
I'll send your listeners that list of best practices from those executives that we talked about.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's 33777, and then that's the number, and then type in Happy Summit, and they'll get that in a PDF. It's kind of fun to look at because it was all different businesses, and these executives sharing ideas of what works in terms of engaging the front line. Just a nice little free giveaway. Of course, my book is available, Lessons from the Drive-Thru, on Amazon.
Hmm.
If you want to buy bulk, give me a call. It's a great study guide to help your frontline leaders grow and develop. So this has been a blast.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Well, I mean, we spanned college football and restaurants
I
and
know.
all sorts of stuff today. So, Monica, thanks again. You're wonderful. And guys, take a listen, pay attention to what she's doing, take a look at her book because I learned a ton even today again. And this is like round two with me and Monica. So, I mean, imagine what you could learn. Thanks again for
Appreciate it, Dave.
joining us. Appreciate it.